Hello, today I want to cover some important health and safety information for you student athletes to understand and share with your teammates concerning the newly signed law that's been termed the Zachary-Martin Act. We're going to go over a lot of information that you need to know and share with your student athletes. I'm Justin Harrison. I oversee athletics on the FHSAA staff, and I want to take a couple minutes today to share this information with you. The Zachary-Martin Act covers two important things here that are very pertinent to us in Florida when we talk about high school athletics. The first part of the law talks about heat stress and how to look at heat stress, how to gauge heat stress, and what to do when it gets too hot here in Florida. The other part deals with the AEDs and the requirements that are posted with those AEDs. So let's talk about heat stress first. And first, when you talk about heat stress, we have to define what heat stress is. And that's what we're going to take the next few minutes to kind of define what heat stress and how do you determine what it is. Heat stress is essentially the wet bulb globe temperature. Often you see it as WBGT. And it's different from your everyday temperature outside because it also includes and factors in your humidity, your wind speed, your sun angle, your cloud cover, and the actual temperature. So all that is put into together and it's created a factor and it gives you a reading there. So it's very important to remember that when you're looking at these, making sure the reading you're looking at does have a WBGT beside it and you're not just looking at the temperature outside. And when you do this, you have to have a device to do this. And those of you who've been around an athletic trainer, some of the athletic trainers will have this on them in person, and it'll be a device, and you just see a little bulb at the end, hence the name of it. You'll see a little bulb at the end, and those devices are what able to give you the measurements that are needed to give you the readings. Also, facilities you may or may not see also have these attached to them. Your stadiums, your venues, your outside arenas, they'll have these attached to it again. May not see it, it may not be in a very open spot, but they'll put it in a spot where it gives you the reading. So it's very important to kind of have these around because, again, this law, the Zachary-Martin Act, now requires this to be used. And what the law states now is for this is to be used for any outdoor school activity during any time of the year. So many of you do conditioning during the summer. That's been underneath your school's rules. However, now your school's required to use this anytime it's an outdoor activity, even if you do an indoor sport. If you're an indoor sport athlete, if you go outside to run stadiums or run on the track, whatever it may be, this has to be used to determine if it's safe or how to give you so many breaks, which we'll go over here in a few minutes. But again, this applies to any event outdoors, whether it's a contest, a practice, conditioning session, a workout. Again, it's very important to know this applies to anything outdoors, any school activity outdoors, even if you are competing in an indoor sport. And here's the important part. So here's what you want to look for in the reading. So once your athletic trainer or your coach or who's ever designed to actually get the reading, here's what they're going to get, or here's how they're going to set up once they actually get the reading. So anything below 82.0, normal activities, do not have to adjust, do not have to require anything. Those are your everyday normal stuff. Now, once you start getting above that, that's when certain requirements come into play. 82.1 to 87.0, it was going to require your team, your athletic activity to require at least 3 separate 4-minute rest breaks per hour of activity. So pretty self-explanatory there. Anytime you have any of those readings there, 3 separate 4-minute breaks. And the key is rest breaks during that each hour of activity. For more higher readings, as you see there, 87.1 to 90.0, it does limit the amount of activity time you're permitted to have as a team. It's a maximum 2-hour activity, and it also requires 4 separate 4-minute rest breaks per hour of activity again. So you're increasing 1 additional 4-minute break, And if you're a football student athlete, you're restricted to a helmet, shoulder pads, and shorts during activities. As you keep going higher in the readings, 90.1 to 92.0, a maximum 1 hour activity time. So again, only allowed to be out there for a maximum of 1 hour during a reading that fits into that range. You have to at least have 5 4-minute rest breaks during that hour, and no protective equipment is allowed, and no conditioning is allowed. So no running stadiums, no running up and down, but you are permitted a practice, just not any conditioning type activities. And anything above a 92, no outdoor activities are permitted. And the key word there is outdoor. And if you look at the last 3 words on the slide, that's the key in all this. The key in all this is still to provide athletic activities, athletic opportunities, but being able to adapt. Being able to adapt, change, modify, changing your spot. Instead of being outside on the track or in the stadium, running stadiums, is there something you can do inside the gym? Can you change the time of it? For those fall sport athletes who compete in August, instead of going at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in August, depending on the reading, depending on where you're at, if you get a higher reading normally around that time, could you go later on in the evening? Could you go before school if school started? Could you go in the morning? So the idea, again, is not to prohibit activity. It's just to adjust to make sure you are protected as a student athlete. So it's very important to share that idea with your teammates, is that this is designed to just provide you with the same opportunities you have now, but just being able to adjust depending on the reading outside. So with the readings aside, the law also requires you to have certain stuff. So each team, each school is required to have certain stuff available for any, again, outdoor activity, any team that's going to compete or condition outside. And the first one is a cooling zone. Pretty obvious there. It's an area where student athletes, you're able to kind of cool off. You're going to want to look for a shaded area, whether it's inside the gym, if you're close to your facility, just an area to you to have those breaks. We mentioned on the previous slide about those rest breaks. So it's a spot for you, for a student athlete and your teammates, to go to rest and to cool off, again, from this Florida heat at times. And again, this must be available for any outdoor school activity. Again, to reiterate, even if you're an indoor sport athlete, if you're conditioning, doing something outdoors, this is also a requirement. The next piece talks about the cold water tub. So it's the ability to submerge a student athlete into a cold water tub in case a student athlete becomes overheated. Now, you'll sometimes see a fancy tub. You'll see them online. Your school may or may not have one already. But, a pool as well could happen. The kiddie pools you commonly see at Walmart in the front, or Target. You may see them there. So again, something you can fill with ice and water, because that's the ability, it gives you the ability to cool an athlete in a quick way. And that's the important part in all this, is when an athlete becomes overheated, the key is to get that student athlete cooled as quick as you can, because the quicker you cool them, the quicker they're going to be back to a healthy state if they unfortunately become overheated. Additional items to have are ice sponges, tarps, towels, something you can get wet, something you can get some ice in to cool you off, to prevent, again, student athletes become overheated and your teammates from becoming overheated. That's the key there, is just having the equipment available to keep you from becoming overheated. Now, as a student athlete and as a teammate, what's important on your end is the hydration. And hydration, as you know, does not start the day of practice. It does not start when you start the practice. It doesn't especially start after you've already begun to practice or to work out or to condition. Hydration starts in advance. Hydration starts days in advance. So it's very important to get your teammates to hydrate days, a week in advance, so get them fluids, get the hydration in them, so they can, one, not become overheated, But two, probably more important, their actual performance will improve the more hydrated a student athlete is. And for many of you who compete in several sports, you may go from one sport in the morning to another one in the afternoon, or even have both in the afternoon from one to the other, which is a good thing. You're involved with many things, but you're going to want to increase what you're hydrating with in addition to water. You want some electrolytes to replenish your fluids to make sure, again, you're the most outstanding performance, I'll call it, for you to compete. So that's very important as well. And we mentioned, again, I alluded to the rest breaks from the previous slide, talked about those. It's very important when you rest to actually rest. Again, because your performance will increase, you'll be able to recover. That's very important, is actually rest while you're trying to rest. It's not doing extra activity. Again, it's when you're doing your activity, you're going all out. But then when you rest, you're actually getting rest so your body can recover from the activities and what you just did. And I kind of alluded to and mentioned this a lot, is be on the lookout and encourage your teammates. You are the best ones to kind of determine to see if a teammate's struggling. You know each other the best. You know when a teammate is not being him or herself and why. And again, encourage your teammates, making sure they're hydrating beforehand, making sure they're getting the appropriate rest, making sure they're getting appropriate food to recover and to be ready for the season. Now let's get into the emergency action plans, often termed the EAPs. This is very important for you as a student athlete. Your school's going to have one in place. It's going to be in place for all your teams, all your activities, and having this emergency action plan is very important. You never hope to obviously put it into play. It's something that'll help everybody if there is any type of an issue. So it's very important to be involved, to know what it is so you can help out, because you may be able to serve a role in helping out with this. And when you're talking about heat stress specifically, emergency action plan, it's very important, as mentioned earlier, to cool the student athlete as soon as you can. The sooner you get that student athlete to start to cool down, the better off that student athlete is going to be. So help your coaches out, help your schools out, be involved, ask to help out being a part of the emergency action plan and what you can do as a student athlete to make sure you provide a safe environment for you and your teammates in case something were to arise. Now we've gone over some stuff about heat stress. Now let's go to the second part of the Zachary-Martin Act, and it deals with the AEDs. You commonly see these around schools. There's probably some in your gym you see hanging up on a wall. So it's very important, and law actually requires this now, to have it available for any school activity, whether indoors or out. So having it around, having it available, meaning if you have an activity on one side of your campus or you're off-site, there's one there that's close by that you can access so you can have available if it's needed. Again, they have to be clearly marked. So you're usually going to see a sign. There's usually a box hanging on the wall that they're sitting on, and there'll be an arrow pointing to it. Usually it's in a bright color. Again, so it's very important to know where those are. I kind of challenge you at this point to, whenever you go anywhere, even if you go to a store or whatever, start to be on the lookout for these. You'll often see these now once you start to look out for them and where they're at. Again, they have to be marked, and there'll usually be a bright sign around it, but it's very clear, it's very obvious. You want it to be, and you got to be able to have it available and be able to access it if in case you need it. Put this on the emergency action plan, as we talked about, having an emergency action plan dealing with heat stress, also involving one with the AED. And as a student athlete, be involved with the plan as well. Ask your coach, ask your teammates how you can help out, how you can be involved on knowing the emergency action plan so you can assist when dealing with the AED. You could be the one who's going to go retrieve the AED while the coach is dealing with whatever situation the coach would need to deal with. So you can be a real key part in this. So it's very important to know them, know where they're at, how to get them out of the box if they're hanging on the wall, if they're in an office, what happens after school if it's behind a locked door. That's very important as well. Again, to be involved with the plan, help your teammates out, very crucial, very key. I do want to thank you for being a part of this today. Again, it was my hope to speak to you in person, have an open Q&A and a dialogue. Unfortunately, with the situation we have now, we weren't able to do so. But again, I wanted to give you the information today. I appreciate your time. I know it's very important to you. Good luck this year. And again, any questions, feel free to reach out to our office, reach out to your coaches, your ADs. They can help out as well. So again, thank you for taking the time today on making you a better student athlete for both yourself and your teammates at your school.